Anyway, I don't want to involve the people. I don't want to. I don't want to. But it's really the driving thing, you know? And then
Yeah.
I was like, I should just do the thing that I love and I'll just work.
I mean, yes.
What I'm gonna do.
Yes. And I mean, as we will, inevitably talk about, our Vivianne Westwood
Yeah,
also thought things were impractical. And look what happened when she was like, nah, you know what? Screw that. I'm gonna do
right.
it.
No, actually, like that is such a testament to our episode, which I guess we could just jump in from there. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a nice little precursor. Don't wait until you're old to do what you love, kids.
For real.
But yeah, like that's absolutely like a testament. But at the same time, like she did very much like given to not following her dreams in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um which is really fascinating, right? Because like she did not get any like I don't want to say fame because she didn't get fame right away either. But she
Mm-mm.
didn't start doing what she loved until after her Saturn return in her early 30s.
Isn't that kind of like par for the course for most
Yes.
Saturn? Yeah.
Yeah, that is a big Saturn return thing. I did like I did look at her chart a bit. I don't really trust the chart on Astrodentist that I found because it doesn't say who rectified it.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, oh, then I could probably rectify this. And then I was like, that's a lot of hours and a lot of research. And I kind of, I don't know. Even though she very much seems like a Sagittarius rising, but like I want the degrees to be accurate. You know what I mean? Like I had to
Yeah.
debate with myself for a while how much more time I was going to invest in this.
I mean, I kind of figured. I was like, oh, she's gonna look at her chart. I know
I looked
she
at the death
is.
chart too. At least I have more information on the death chart than I do on the birth chart. But
Oh,
no
good.
matter. So we're gonna do a bonus episode for you guys. Since we had the passing of Vivian Isabel Westwood, who is a dame, by the way. She has
Yeah.
a DBE, and an RDI. And she lived from April 18th, 1941 to December 29th, 2022.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and died with a lot of other people.
Oh, who else
The
died?
Pope died, Barbara Walters died.
Oh, the Pope. Who cares?
Yeah, and like the numbers
Uh,
just keep trickling in.
yeah.
It wasn't the current Pope.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I mean, Pope. You know.
The one that stepped down, quote unquote, cough cough after trying to defend kid touching. Right. So and then when my grandparents asked me, well, what Pope was it? And I was like, the one that doesn't like the gays. They
Oh,
both
so
looked at me like, what?
yeah. So like, who cares, right? Like,
Right.
who cares?
I'm like, I don't know how else to describe him.
He was old
Uh
and
Kid
white.
touching
Oh,
and doesn't
okay.
like the gays. A bad person died. Like that's all you need to know. Like the bad Pope
Yeah,
who
the
was
bat.
still alive. Right. Um not that the Pope is good. I don't we don't question my humor when I say weird shit.
No, not
Um
really. It's
we just let it be what it is. But I had to look up what DBE and RDI meant. And it means Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire. And there's a really fun story about when she received that. And then Royal Designer of Industry,
ooh.
right? So she got these fancy titles from Queen Elizabeth, who also died this year.
Hmm.
You know, just rack them in. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but she was famous for making punk and new wave mainstream.
Yeah.
So like I guess that's the big claim to fame. And I remember like in the punk community, there was a lot of like, arguments about like what a big thing is, well, they're a sellout. And it's like, well, what justifies selling out under capitalism? Because aren't we all? So I don't like learning her story because I really didn't know the ins and outs of her, aside from like Aizawa, right?
Yeah.
And like I knew who she was, but like outside of Ayazawa's work and knowing like that influence, I didn't really know anything about her life. I was never like a really big fan. I've never been, I don't know, like that stream of fashion has never been like my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we wouldn't have Nana
Yeah.
without Vivianne Westwood.
Yeah.
Uh, we wouldn't have Ayazawa wouldn't be Ayazawa without Vivianne Westwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's like its own testament and
Yeah.
that its own homage as well.
Yeah.
Like in its own rightful like subculture.
Mm-hmm. Um, I did as much as I could do for research and stuff because when Nate is home, we spend like all the time together.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
so it's a. But I was watching what's this video, and he did a nice little compiling of her life, and two things that really struck me as interesting. One of them is kind of like, oh, this other thing, but then one of them I was like, oh, I wonder if Kirsten read this because it kind of bothered me. Um, so when she renamed the shop for like the fifth time,
Yeah, yeah.
um, calling it World's End, I thought that was really interesting because that's the name of a character in Revolutionary Girl Utena.
Okay. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and I was like, wait, what? And then I
Is
started to
there a tie over
wonder.
there as well,
Yeah,
right?
I was really
Um,
curious. I was like,
yeah. No, that's
wait.
that's actually that is actually really interesting, and I would be curious. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like, even if that could be known.
yeah. Like I think that'll be really interesting because he's just like, oh, I'm World's End, and like spoilers for Utena, but like World's End is like a god, like a
Yeah.
like human but not.
Right. Yep.
So I thought that was really intriguing, and
Omnipotent.
yeah,
Yeah.
omnipotent, and because it's another shoujo manga too, and it's just
Hmm.
like, oh, that's interesting. Magical girl, and
Yeah.
then the that tweed, that very specific tweed
Hmm.
that she saw that girl on the train like wearing and was just
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, I want to make like a whole thing out of that tweed.
Right.
When he like explained like who makes it and
Hmm.
what makes it authentic, I'm like, I don't like that.
Right.
I
Yeah. There's a
don't
lot of there's a lot of weird stuff in the world.
yeah.
In the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like the basic breakdown, it's like this little group of islands that it has to be made there by, you know, indigenous people that
Right.
live on those islands. And I'm
Right.
like,
And so
oh no.
it's a matter of within that atonement of using that specific fabric, are you giving them the praise of that fabric? Are
Hmm.
you paying them for their time and their worth? And
Hmm.
are you also, I think that if you're going to make a ton of money off of something like that, especially within groupings of our indigenous peoples and what their crafts are, that there should be some kind of reparations set up if you exceed the amount
Yeah.
that you intended to make, right? So if it's
Hmm.
couture, if it's high-end fashion, if it's going to go for a very high dollar amount,
Yeah.
like I think all of those things need to be factored in. And if you're going to continue making money past that, if it's like a limited collection, then obviously you can balance your capitalism a little bit better. But if you're in turn going to like exceed that capital gain, then you also need to pay it forward.
Yeah. And I don't know if you found anything like if she had done that or not because it
No, I didn't even know about
okay.
that part of it.
Oh, you didn't? Oh goodness.
I spent my time reading a lot of write-ups on her life, and I found one that I figured I could read, and then I spent a lot of time actually focusing on more so like the influence on Ayazawa's work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but I did the only like okay, so obviously like there's all of the things right now that are being published.
Yeah.
And the one write-up that I enjoyed is on Art Forum.
Okay.
And it was actually written like the day after she passed, which is like, I'm just like, how do people get this stuff out so fast and know this much information about someone?
Ooh,
But I guess if
right.
you work in fashion and she is like an icon for you, you would know her life while she's living it, right?
Right. Yeah,
And like
yeah.
that's a variable difference because that's not me.
I mean, you have a lot of books in your head, so I mean, you know
I have a lot
something
of
about
books in my
someone.
head, but like fashion has never been like one like street fashion, sure. Alternative fashion, sure, but not in the way that like I have ever hyper obsessed over designers or design history.
That's fair.
Like quirky aspects that fit into culture, sure.
Right?
Right. But like the life and times of Vivian Westwood was never really like a thing that made it through like my hyper vigilant research docket.
Fair.
So I
Yeah.
just read a bunch of other people's, right? Because that's why humans are really cool, is because different people hyper focus on different things and are able to bring it to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I found this write up on Art Forum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do they even have the author on here? No.
No, oh man.
Cute. So it says British fashion designer Vivianne Westwood, who brought punk style to global attention, died December 29th in South London at the age of 81. News of her death was announced by her uh we just said this word, but I'm going to say by her company. Um which did not specify a cause. Westwood with Malcolm McLaren
Mhm.
in 1971 opened the boutique that would eventually be called Sex on London's King's Road, where she
Mhm.
sold her clothing. So she opened that shop exactly at the age of 30,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that Saturn return right there.
Right?
Where she sold her clothing, shocking at the time for incorporating safety pins and purposeful rips.
Mm-hmm.
Viv Albertine from the band The Slits
Mm-hmm.
described them in her 2014 memoir as mohair jumpers, knitted on large needles so loosely that you could see all the way through. T shirts slashed and written on by hand, seams and labels on the outside showing the construction of the piece. And she noted that Westwood and McLaren's fashions reflected the attitude of the music she and her compatriots were making. It's okay to not be perfect, to show the workings of your life and your mind in your songs and your clothes. There was no punk before me and Malcolm, Westwood noted in her own 2014 biography. And the other things you should know about punk too. It was a total blast. Vivian Westwood was born Vivian Swire in 1941 in the tiny village of Tint Whistle, which I love. How charming,
Super cute. Yeah.
right? I was like, that's a village name. It's so adorable. But she was born to working class parents. When she was a teenager, she moved with her family to a London suburb of Harrow, where she enrolled in a silversmithing and jewelry making course at Harrow Art School, similar to Ayazawa, right? Art school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was like one of those things. And I was like, huh. Feeling out of place, owing to her humble background, she dropped out and instead pursued a career as a primary school teacher. She continued to make jewelry, however, which she sold at the Portobello Road street market. Following a brief marriage to factory apprentice Derek Westwood, whose last name she would retain, she took up with McLaren himself, an art school dropout and a music promoter. And the pair began selling secondhand rock records together in the back of a clothing shop on Kings Road. In 1971, with a small loan from her mother, Westwood rented out the entire shop, which the couple first named Let It Rock. And then a few months later, Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die. Besides selling leather jackets, the store offered Westwood's own designs. Shredded and pinned surplus t shirts unsold from the bands McLaren managed, as well as tees that Westwood had stenciled with suggestive phrases, or dyed in the couple's bathtub, or to which she had stitched zippers, or chicken bones boiled bare on the couple's stove. In 1974, McLaren renamed the store Sex, and latex fetish wear was added to its offerings. After he put together the Sex Pistols a few years later, Westwood began dressing them in the same fashion available at the store, now called seditationaries. Right? I
Uh,
was every time I see it, I'm like, how do you say that? How do you say that?
right? It's like, oh man.
By 1981, fired in large part by the success of the pistols and the attention it had brought to her designs, the store and Westwood's fashion had become successful enough that she was able to hire cutters and pattern makers and began showing collections. Her Pirates, quote unquote, collection, a 1981 collaboration with McLaren, with its cascading ruffles and wide swashbuckling belts, became a fashion touchstone for the new romantic bands of the early decade. Following the couple's split shortly thereafter, and with their shop finally named World's End, shuttered.
Yeah.
Westwood entered the world of high fashion in earnest. Her 1985 design, the Mini Crinny, an abbreviated bell-shaped skirt inspired by the bustles fashion of the 19th century, gathered her even more notoriety. And she continued to create clothes that blended historical silhouettes with shape tailoring and typically British fabrics such as tweed.
Mhm.
Westwood struggled financially in the early years of this endeavor, at one point selling her fashions by candlelight in the temporarily reopened World's End after the power had been shut off. During the late 80s and early 90s, she got by on bank loans and the money earned from teaching gigs, including one at the, okay, this is German. This is German. Okay.
I wish you could see it, then I would be.
Hochschule der Kunst
Oh,
in Berlin.
Osho.
It's a place in Berlin. It's
Wait.
Hochschule.
Let's see. HCH? Oh,
Hochschule.
E. Hochschule.
Right? I'm just like, it's thick.
Well, I mean, I took German for 3 quarters, so I've
Okay,
retained
a little
stuff.
bit,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
it's either
I took French
Hochschule.
for 3 years, and there is no way.
Yeah, no, I love the German language, so yeah, Hochschule. People can correct me if you're listening out there.
Like it's yeah. I mean, I had to sing in German.
Yes.
I hated it, and I hated it.
Oh,
I
it's
hated it. And like,
oh.
if you weren't spitting, we were told if you weren't spitting, you weren't doing it correctly. So like, all the girls would just be spitting on each other.
I mean, they're not necessarily incorrect.
I know, but it's still ugh. Okay, so anyway, she taught there until 2004. Um, and that's where she met Austrian-born husband Andreas Kronthaler. Okay. Pretty
Andreas.
Andreas,
Yes.
yes, who would become her creative partner as well. Westwood eventually built a fashion empire comprising of 2 menswear lines and 3 womenswear lines, and accessories and perfumes. She was awarded a damehood in 2006 for her services to fashion. Attendant to her path-breaking designs were her strong political beliefs, about which she was vocal. Among the causes she campaigned were nuclear disarmament and environmentalism. She fought anti-terrorism laws and government spending policies that rendered the poor even more so. Despite her tremendous success, Westwood remained true to her thrifty working class roots, often biking to work and continually touting in recycling her fashion. As well, she retained the fierce, authoritarian, defying spirit that characterized her work from the start, as for example, when she went pantyless to the 1992 ceremony at which Queen Elizabeth awarded her the Order of the British Empire.
which is very funny.
Whirling saucily to reveal the fact for photographers. The only reason that I am in fashion is to destroy the word conformity, Westwood said in her biography. Nothing is interesting to me unless it's got that element. She twirled.
She did. I saw that shot. I mean, it was blurred, where,
Right.
but I'm
But she's
like,
like, I'm going to
oh,
meet the queen and show her my fanny.
essentially. And I was just, and people were like shocked, and I'm like, seriously,
Yeah.
how? Why are you
Right.
shocked? Like, if any of her
Right.
stuff up until now hasn't told you who she is, like, what
But
the
like
hell?
the British are stuffy.
I know, I know, but it's kind of like it reminded me of, oh God, I am going to get her name wrong. She was this actress. She's still very much like in like the political scene, and she has been since like forever, like the 70s. Um, she was like accused of, y- t- no, treason. She was accused of treason because she was like over in, was it Vietnam or Korea? See, it's I can't remember, but people are mad. They're like still mad at her. They're like, "Oh, you totally, were on the side of not America. You're such a traitor."
Right.
And I'm like, no. People just happened to snap pictures of her at the wrong time while she was, wearing a military helmet and sitting in a vessel that happened to not be American. But
Yeah, but people
she's,
get really weird about that in general, and
I
whether
know,
it was her choice to
no.
actually do it or not is neither here nor there because like editing is always going to win and the narratives that are spun and told through the media
Yeah,
are designed, right?
yeah, I know.
Right?
It's like a whole thing, but it just sharply reminded me of it because this actress whose names I just can't remember at the moment, um, she's still like very active. Like she is out there, like in the
Right.
trenches. Like she has a police record because she just keeps on going,
Right.
no, this is
Well,
wrong.
and like yeah, it would also like if there are people who are upset about those types of things, I don't know. I feel like are they doing the work? Do they have a
Mm,
place to talk? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah, I
what have
do.
they
I know what you
done?
mean. Yeah, I no,
Um,
I know what you mean.
and also like where's their affiliation and why do they have loyalty to borders?
These are the questions.
Right? Why are they holding on to any semblance of imperialism? And again, though, that goes into what are their political beliefs? Do they have them? What's their economic philosophy? Like, where's their theory? You know?
Yeah, and I mean, I know most of those questions, but I'm not gonna go there because
No,
we
yeah,
are,
for
they're
sure.
doing the thing. But it just reminded me of that, where people are like, oh, and I know, the British are stuffy, but I'm like, it's so funny how people that are actually like out there, doing
Well, but
doing the stuff.
like, yeah, this is like a clean cut though. So anybody who would be like, "Oh, shocked, oh, blah blah blah," you gotta remember, the British people love their empire and they
Mhm.
love their queen,
Yeah, that's true.
right? And they colonized the world. So
Yes.
like, it's really those questions, and so people who go against the system, and because of also epigenetic trauma, um, it's scary.
Mm,
Right? And so like even saying no, that's cool, mom. Like you could get in trouble,
I
right? So,
know.
it's layers and layers and layers of oppression. But that's also why we need people like her
Yeah,
in
that's
the
why I was just
world
like, but this
who
is
are
cool.
willing to like go in and just be like, yeah, I'm fucking doing it. And on top of that, I'm gonna show you my fanny. Like
Yeah,
I
but
was just
also,
awarded by the queen, and by the way.
but also the queen didn't seem to care. She was just kind of like, ah,
Yeah, well, like that's but
that's
see, okay,
okay.
that's not the same. So like that's its own thing of conditioning because the whole thing within the royals, from what I understand, they're not
Mm.
supposed to show emotion or political opinion at all. They're supposed to be neutral at all costs.
Mm.
Yes, exactly. So she wouldn't show a reaction because like she's trained herself her entire life not to.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
before that she was trained not to.
right. 'Cause
Um
that's how you do.
That's how you do. Like the royal family's weird and inbred. Um
Yeah. Yeah.
but like with McLaren and Westwood, they had an ability to synthesize clothing and music, and
Hmm.
it really did shape the 1970s punk scene specifically. And I had also read that McLaren was an American, and I don't know if that's true because I didn't really care. Um, but like in one article, they were like, "Yeah, he brought punk from America," and I like it just brought me back to like remembering the constant argument of who was punk first, the Sex Pistols or the Ramones, and I'm like, "Oh God, it's even in this." Um, but there's so many similarities between the life of Westwood and of Yazwa, right?
Hmm.
And so, like, before Yazwa was a mangaka, she went to the Fashion Institute, which is where she honed her drawing style.
Hmm.
And we can see that that fashion is a staple in her character development and throughout her stories. From Gokunjo, Neighborhood Stories, which is a manga and anime, if anybody's not aware. And I also found out through this that it was renamed to Courtyard of Hearts, which I didn't know.
Ooh.
Um,
Ooh.
right? And I was like, why'd they rename it? It seems weird to me because it really is a bunch of like stories of a neighborhood. But
Yeah, but that's so very Alice in Wonderland in my
right.
head.
But like it's also not an Alice story.
Right?
um, but yeah, we can see the influence starting there and all the way into Nana. Um, her illustrations are like the clothes of Yasuo's illustrations, they're meticulous clothes. Like they're meticulous design.
Hmm.
Um, and they were really, really heavily inspired and also influenced the youth movements of the 90s in Japan. In Gokunjo, we start to see this, and what will come as these designs are fleshed out in early examples of subcultures of Lolita and Shibukali and cyberpunk.
Yeah, I had seen like I'm not gonna call it an argument, but someone had made a comment on a different video that I was watching. They were like, well, the fashion is, okay, so you have like Lolita, and they're like, see, what's going on in in Nana is not Lolita.
No,
It's completely separate.
but it shouldn't Nana shouldn't even be mentioned aside from one character. If we look at Gokunjo and Parakiss, then we can talk on that.
Yeah, because I'm like, what? I'm like, well, that is true, but there is one character who's
Because we have
Lolita.
Happy Berry, and Happy Berry was actually developed and started in Neighborhood Stories,
Hmm.
right?
And
Because
that's
like the older sister was young in Neighborhood Stories
mhm.
because it's her story of going to art school.
Yeah, and then we have our super fan of Nana in, this one, who I
Mhm.
believe is Lolita, and I'm blanking on her name right
Yeah,
now
she
because it was
is.
a long day.
She does dress in lowly style. Now, the thing is though, is I've never heard anybody claim that like Yazwa invented this thing. It wasn't invented by her. It's the same stuff that Victorian dolls would wear.
Yeah,
So, it's and obviously like it's a little bit modernized because like we have to make it for like whole-sized people. But
right.
um but obviously like it's not invented, but see, the thing is it's the movement of street fashion in Japan.
Mhm.
And Yasuo was a big part of that. A huge part, especially for young adult because like shoujo manga until like Nana specifically was not for young adults.
Mm.
It was always for little girls.
Right.
Right? And it didn't have controversial topics at all until Nana.
Yeah.
So like that's a huge driving force.
Yeah.
And like it was in Cookie Magazine. That's a
Hmm.
fashion magazine. I don't know. That argument just seems so silly and crackpot to me where I'm like, when did you start reading these?
Well, I mean, that is the question too, especially because like no shade to the poor person that, made this particular video, but they weren't very good. They were like, "Oh, I'm going to do a video about this topic that involves Westwood and Yazawa," and then I made it like 7 minutes through the video, and I was just like, you've said of like a lot of like I don't actually know this. I don't really
Right.
know much about that. And I'm just like I'm done. I'm done. Like you decided to like make a video, but you didn't do like any of the research. I just
Or maybe they just weren't a fan and they just saw the thing and it annoyed them.
I
But
know
like,
I
I
don't
don't know, when
know.
things annoy me, I have to know even more about them.
Same.
Like, I'm just like, no, give me all the information now.
Never
I
send a
turn
huff.
into I turn into like a research goblin when I don't like something. I'm like, I need to know how to argue this flawlessly.
People are gonna be mad at me, but never send a Hufflepuff to do a Ravenclaw's job. I'm just just
No,
saying.
so, a great example of the design elements within this progression of the the Yazawa verse, Yazawa verse. I've been saying,
Yazoverse.
yeah. I'm like, no, I'm calling it this thing. Um, of depth from Gokujo to Parakiss is something that I mentioned. So like, there's a lot of depth though in that development, and then in Nana, we really see her love for Westwood. And I would very much say that this is a homage to Westwood's life's work. Nana is. And I know I already said that, but I can't say it enough. Also, the sovereign orb is literally everywhere.
Oh,
Okay.
everywhere. It's so pretty though.
And but like, that is the sovereign of England, right?
Yep.
And the differences, which I think is really funny, and I love this obviously, is it's the sovereign of England with the rings of Daddy Saturn.
It's Saturn. It's just
It's
Saturn.
like creating this binding and chaining effect on imperialism, and I'm like, did they know?
I don't know. I wondered that too. They're like, "Oh, you can use our logo because the tweed." Because essentially they were just like, "Well, there's like a whole like organization that's dedicated to the authentic tweed from
Right.
that very specific chain of islands." And then they're
Yeah.
just like, "Oh, you're like you can use our logo because you're making like fashion stuff off of it." And then yeah, she did. She was like, "I'ma just add
Right, but it becomes like this
Saturn."
iconic thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also the armor ring, and the armor ring in Nana is like in the first scene,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so like that's also a really iconic piece. Um, and like it's interesting though because like the fashion is one thing, but it's now that I've learned, it's so apparent that she started out with jewelry making. Like it's so apparent
Mm-hmm.
because like the clothes have their own aesthetic, and sure the jewelry has that aesthetic as well, but I like the for whatever reason, like her clothes are one thing, but her jewelry is just elevated.
Mm-hmm.
Still the same like style, but it is elevated.
Yeah.
You can tell that that was her craftsmanship.
Right. So where
Um,
she started. She started with the jewelry.
right, exactly. So she had more time. Like that's where it began.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the inspiration came so for these things within Nana though, the inspiration came directly from the Sex and Seditationaries collection. And here's my Easter egg. Okay. I was like, I don't know. Apparently. Okay, so apparently Shin is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to resemble Glenn Matlock. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Sid Vicious replaced Glenn Matlock. Uh-huh. And Shin
Oh,
replaces
this is
Ren.
Ren.
That's the
Okay.
Easter egg. And I was like,
Oh man.
no. Oh my goodness. They replaced each other. But like, and like the story of Glenn Matlock is actually really funny because I remember hearing about this before. Like when he left the band, they said that it was like, a mutual thing, blah blah blah. Because like the whole like the Sex Pistols were cast. Like they were a boy band. They were built, right?
Right.
Um, but later Glenn like came out and said, I was kicked out for liking the Beatles.
Oh. Oh no.
Yeah, like much later because he was resentful. Um, but that's its own thing. But like I was reading about this, and apparently like the whole Shin looking like Glenn and then replacing Ren, but in real life Sid Vicious replaced Glenn. I was like, huh,
Hmm.
clever. That's so clever.
Oh, and then I'm just like, okay, was that on purpose? Was that on
Right,
purpose?
I think it was because I really do think that Yaswa really knows like the history. I think
Yeah.
that she's an actual like dedicated fan.
Yeah, which is funny because we kind of, well, I guess we were trashing Sid, right? We were just like, he's just terrible.
Sid
Just,
is a terrible. He was a terrible person.
he's a terrible person.
He's a terrible person.
Oh man.
Murder suicide is not cool.
No.
Like, and that's
No.
that's what that was. Like, it was toxic, and like that kind of love story is toxic.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
why it's romanticized, but like it still doesn't make sense why it ever was. And then
No, not really.
the heart shaped jacket was from 1999, the Red Label collection.
Mm-hmm.
So I did find that out. I didn't realize that, but like I think it based on like the photos though that we see of Westwood in the jacket, I feel like she made it pre 90s. She just didn't add it to a collection until then.
Okay.
But I also think it's
Yeah.
really neat because about the time that Nana receives the heart-shaped jacket is about the time that the Red Label came out,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right? And then I also made some notes on like because this has to do with Vivianne Westwood's jewelry currently. I noticed in like 2019 2020 up until like a year or so ago maybe a lot of like the younger generation specifically on like TikTok and Instagram like influencers were wearing the Westwood safety pen pearl necklace with the sovereign sphere
Yep.
on it,
Yeah, I've
right?
seen that and I was like, do you know what you're wearing?
No. Um
You're
I
like,
really think that it's like separate. I think that it kind of bled through, but I think it bled through specifically from the Nana resurgence because that only took off after Nana was put on Netflix and Hulu,
oh, okay.
right? So it's recent.
Yeah. I mean, like, I get it, but I
No,
just
I
want to
totally get it.
ask,
I absolutely
like,
get it.
do you?
I think that some of them know, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that, you know, it's just one of those things since alt fashion is really popular
Yeah.
that it kind of bled into influencer fashion.
Yeah.
You know, um and I always find it fascinating because I'm like, how does that 19-year-old kid afford that fucking necklace that I've been wanting for like 20 years?
Right? I'm just like, I mean, I have a Westwood necklace,
Hmm.
but I got lucky
Right,
getting that. So I'm just like, when I saw
right.
that, because I have seen them, I wondered that too. I'm like, wait, no,
While doing this research, I
no,
found a watch that I really want, but it's only like $90, and I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of doable.
right?
Um, but it's you know, I when I first started seeing that on TikTok, I found it just so fascinating. I'm like, do you care as much as I care?
No. Then the answer is okay. If you are like listening to this and you are an influencer, like just,
Oh no,
just
this is total shade.
this. Oh, okay. I'm like, add us in our DMs. I don't care. You
Oh,
know.
still be our friend.
Oh yeah, like
That's fine. We
sure.
don't have to get along on everything. Otherwise, it is not a good friendship.
Like they're throwing shade at my necklace. Like, yeah,
No, it's
just
not at the necklace. It's do you understand?
yeah, do you understand? That's all it is. That's all we want to know. My goodness.
Do you have my deep rooted, weird subcultural love for it? Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't actually have to do with the label or really the designer, but a comic.
Yeah, no, I get it because it's the same thing like I think about this like way too often. It's the same thing with all of my silly like 1998 to like 2000 Sailor Moon fan fiction.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know? Like when people are like I love Sailor Moon, I'm like, "But were you there? Were you there on
Right, it's
Sailor
different, but I still
Yeah.
want like people to love it. You know what I mean?
Oh
It's
yeah,
just
no. I need friends. I
right.
want people to do the
Yeah.
things, but also I'm like, were you also there with me on SailorJupiter.com listening to the 8-bit tracks of, fighting evil by moonlight? Like were we
Right,
there?
right.
Were we
Yeah.
all there?
Were we there?
Oh,
Were we all there? Wait, no, we couldn't have been.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
like,
and
and
it's
I
like
get that,
yeah.
and I totally get that. And like there's such like a weird, I don't know, generational hate is such a bizarre thing to me. And like maybe it's because like I'm of the age where I'm in the middle
Yeah.
of generations now, right?
Hmm.
But like even before we had like our current younger generations, being a nerd and being into the things that we're into was not cool.
Nope.
And so now it's almost like, oh, but we couldn't like it first.
Yeah.
We couldn't like it first then because like if people knew you liked it, it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
You were treated horribly for it. And now like it's like people are getting into it and you're so excited to talk about it and it's like, "Oh my god, I love this when I was 10." And then like, "Oh, you're old."
Mm.
Right? And so it's like a whole nother layer.
I mean, if they say that the answer is respect your elders.
But I also don't believe in respecting your elders because of the generation I'm from where I'm like, fuck your elders.
Oh no, I know, and I totally get it. Is I'm talking like in the fandom, like hello, we were,
Right. Yeah.
like
No.
it's not like that it's not like legit like respect your
Right.
elders. It's
I mean,
like
I think I feel this way more often when it comes to astrology than when it comes to like my weird niches and fandoms because I just don't talk to people within like my fandoms.
No, I mean that's fair. I mean, like I just have, I'm working on it. I have like generational frustration because you
Yeah.
know, you just like want to know. You're like, oh, I want to know, and then they're just like they don't know like the whole bit, and then you're like, but I'm sad because you don't know this other half of it, and then when you like try to explain it,
Oh,
sometimes
see,
they're
I just
like,
info dump. I don't even ask. I'm just like, here's all the
Oh.
information because I just get so excited that I'm just like, here, I'm autistic. I'm going to tell you everything about this weird thing and also things that you never would have thought of.
Right?
And I'm sorry that you didn't like it and it's been 3 hours.
Like it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
Just,
It's
he's
fine.
like, well,
Things are different. It's okay.
yeah,
I hate
things are
everything.
different.
I hate everything and I'm getting better about not hating everything. So it's okay.
I have things that I have, yeah.
I have authority issues.
No, that's fair. I mean, I have things that I think like I'm trying not to do that because like the older that I'm like getting, the more and more I legitimately do hate things. So I'm trying to find things. I'm like, no, I have to go back to my love things because I don't want to be like crotchety crone. I want to be like happy crone.
See, like as I get older, like I've just, I guess, honed in more, not necessarily on how I hate everything. Uh, I have all the Saturn places, like Saturn shit. I have all the Saturn, all the fucking Saturn. It's more like I see this direction, my growth in not hating everything all of the time actually comes into play now where I'm like, oh, that's because it's hypocritical. I don't like anything that could or is hypocritical.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's so many things.
Yeah. No,
Like,
that's true.
So many things. Like hypocrisy is like my kryptonite where I'm just like, and you don't have all the facts. And since you don't have all of the facts, like that's hypocritical.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like it's the discernment. I was thinking about that today because I know that even though Aries and stuff like Saturn does like have a hold on my chart, so I'm just like, but I don't know if that's a bad thing because you're like, but you can see stuff,
Right.
and that's good, but also frustrating because you tend to pop the bubbles of everybody else. Everyone's like we, and I'm like no, bad.
Yeah, I do that too. But I'm more
I
like,
know you
but I'm
do.
more like, we're not just gonna pop your bubble. What you didn't notice while you were still in your bubble is I might have put like lead chains on your ankle. So like, not only am I gonna pop it, but you're gonna get grounded so fast it might hurt.
No, it's true. I think that's the thing though, is like since we've been friends, I'm just like Kirsten's the one that taught me like it's okay to pop people's bubble and be like and
because
like
it's
don't
a boundary.
give a fuck.
Because it's a boundary. Because usually, more often than not, it's a boundary. I was born in my villain era, children. Born in it. I think the villain era trend is like so funny because I'm like, oh, cute, you guys are learning boundaries.
Yeah, no, I do. Oh, I like that trend because usually people are doing the thing where they're like, they're like changing clothes, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh.
I think it's really cute. I think it's cute. But like me, like being cynical, I'm just like, oh, that's adorable. You found boundaries.
Yeah, so thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you next week.
Next week, do we have any words of advice?
Goodness, that's yeah. Now I
Do
have
what
to
you
think about
love.
that. Yeah, do it. Yes, do it.
Do what you love at all costs.
Yeah, even if it's like terrifying because it always is. It always is.
It's always terrifying.
Yeah, but it's great. It's actually great once you're in it, once you're in the thick of it.
Right. Cool. Good night.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye. I don't like these headphones at all. They're like really fancy. And
Oh,
they make it so that my ears feel like they're in suction cups.
are they pods?
No,
No.
they're gaming. They're like fancy gaming noise cancellation
Oh, yeah,
headphones.
I have ones like that. I actually quite enjoy them, but I can see how you'd be like, this is a squid. It's crushing my head.
Yeah, it's not tight. It's just like it feels like there's no air in my ears. Air doesn't move in there.
If Nate was here, he'd say, "Stop trying to breathe through your ears, Kirsten."
I'm pretty sure my skin breathes.